Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, Masaji Stoner. We're here with a very, very special episode of VSW podcast. Today, we're with the one and only, someone that I really looked up to in this industry, Mr. Randy Carver Jr. Welcome.
What a joy to be here, man. And finally on the VSW podcast. Happy to be here. And yeah, season 3, man. It took a while to make it happen, but we're here.
4 years in the making, I feel, but it's good.
I know. That's real. That's real.
Like I said, you truly are one of the people I look up to. I got into indie wrestling around 2017, 18. Started locally in my area, NCW and stuff, and soon ventured out. I ended up finding Limitless end of 19, and then obviously 2020 hit, which kind of caused a lot of things. But I've been a fan, and I've been hooked ever since, I have to say.
Well, that's awesome, dude. I didn't realize, how long you've been doing all this and been a part of it, but it's really cool to hear. And you were tuned in. I mean, you were tuned into pretty much everything we did, closed taping wise, the shows right beforehand. So we really appreciate the support, especially, you're not just down the road. It's a couple-hour drive for you to get there.
It's about 2.5, 3 hour ride, depending. To go to Yarmouth, your Brewer show is like 5 hours, but
yeah, that's a hefty drive.
But yeah, it is a little bit of a hike, but it's always well worth it. I always say I'd rather travel north than travel west. I think the traffic is kind of going that way. I've actually had longer trips going to like Springfield than going to Maine.
Really? Wow.
So I'm always for it. But yeah, we like I said, I was all excited for that Chris Statlander versus AG match. And then the pandemic, but I quickly tuned in to Pandemic in the dojo, and then all your seasons of the road, and all the pay-per-views that were aired through the tapings through that. We had a bunch when Danny Garcia was running his title reign.
Yeah, it was a special time. It was an interesting time for sure.
For me because I was able to kind of slow down the pace of what all wrestling was and kind of just focus in on those 3 or 4 matches a week.
Yeah, and it was crazy because we were doing them all. Like, we literally had one of those tapings that I think we did over 80 matches in 3 days because we're trying to, granted we're trying to minimize the amount of people and the amount of time we're together, so just try to get as much in one swoop kind of as you can. But yeah, it made it interesting. It was the first time that we really dove into kind of doing any kind of episodic series like that. And I think that it helped shape, and we learned a lot kind of moving forward to what the live shows were going to look like in return and what the production was going to look like on the other side.
Yeah, and it built a lot of good feuds with a lot of the newer people that were coming in at the time. People like Becca, Love Doug. His feud with Ava Rebbit was one of my favorite feuds ever. You had a lot of things going on that kept these stories alive during the week. Who was going to join this one? Who was partnering with this? And you also got to see the progression of these people. Let's take Becca for an instance. I saw her in 2020 right before the pandemic, and I have to say she was basic Becca. She was basic as basic could be. By the time the dojo tapings were done and we had returned to wrestling, she was almost at that pop icon level. So a lot of transformations too took place during that pandemic era.
Yeah, I think it just gave wrestlers a chance to kind of spread their wings, and there wasn't. I don't want to say there wasn't pressure because it was such a weird time, and you didn't know really when your next bookings were going to be. But I think it for those that wanted to, it gave time to kind of look inside and kind of express some creativity that might have been bundled up a little bit, or to have the flexibility really to try new things in front of the most forgiving crowd that you're going to have, which is your peers and your crew, and just see kind of what stuck, because if something works in a room like that, it's definitely going to work in a crowd of a couple hundred people too. So we
Definitely.
saw different characters throughout that, like you said, like a Becca, Love Doug, Waves and Curls. There were a lot of different ones throughout the couple seasons of that series that I think just started to kind of, I don't know, shape and mold their characters and figure out really how they wanted to be presented when shows came back in full form.
And then that first show back, Patience is Virtue, my God, it was a sellout crowd. We didn't even know what was going on, who was going to be there, the matches, anything. Everybody just headed there.
Yeah, we were lucky too. I mean, I was, having that long of a layoff, and the world changed as it did. You're never sure jumping back into the flow of like live shows how it's going to go, but we had a lot of kinks to work out, I would say, in that first year back. But there was, those first couple shows back, there was a buzz in the room. There was an electricity that people hadn't seen live wrestling in over a year, and it was very exciting and just cool. I mean, you're literally seeing people that you have not seen. You'd see them on a monthly basis, and now you haven't seen them in a year and a half. You know what I mean? It was emotional. I'll say that it was emotional, but it was fun to get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, even like, because Yarmouth is really much like a family when you walk in there. The fans, for the most part, go to every show. So you see a lot of the same people, same faces.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a crew of the same people for a long
it was
time.
also weird because, a lot of these people, well, I mean, me personally, I met them online via, watching, the shows, watching this on YouTube and getting to interact. So then seeing them face to face was even more cool. So I'm like, oh, wow. And then people are recognizing, hey, Versace, what's going on? I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Um, so it was a cool time. But I feel like from that time on, then, Limitless just took another, just took off again. Once you guys got back in the flow, it's been like a nonstop powerhouse. I mean, what happened at Vacation Land Cup, what you guys pulled off, it is one of the greatest feats in all of indie wrestling history. I mean, that show was amazing.
I appreciate that, man. We had it was an interesting stretch going into it, and it was not something that was really laid out in our plan for this year when it first started. But really, since the Cup of 23, we've just had such a consistent wave of support, and we've been trying new things. And I feel like the crew that we have right now is really connecting with the people that we have in the room, and I don't know, this summer came and it just felt like a point in time where we could realistically make a charge forward like that. And we had, some main icons in the room, which meant a lot to me. And I think meant a lot to, main wrestling fans and just wrestling fans around the Northeast to appreciate the history behind it. And, having a Scotty Too Hottie, a Dirty Dango, Luke Robinson coming back to the ring for something like that. Tony Atlas was in the house, and then our guys too, Aiden Agro, Ace Romero, Alexander Lee, while not in action, he was there to share that experience with us. And, guys who are legitimate building blocks of this company who, I don't know that we ever envisioned it would be something like that, but to have another crack at doing an arena show where I felt like we didn't hit everything that we needed to hit the first time, it was great. And I think is going to be a pretty cool thing moving forward.
Yeah, like I said, the atmosphere in there was something else. I've been into some pretty big arenas for indie wrestling, but there was nothing like that. Seeing the big screens on top, seeing just the whole crowd, seeing how many people were actually packed in there to see these guys. And like you said,
I know.
yes, a lot of people were there probably to see, the main logos and the former WWE guys, but a lot of people were also there to see Big Boofer and all of those people that were there fighting for this chance to get that title shot and to win the Vacation Land Cup.
Yeah, I was talking to Brian Black, another mainstay about the show in general, and he was saying how like surprised that he was that so many people knew these wrestlers on the come up, like a Big Buffa, like a Gabby Forza, Channing Thomas, Anthony Green, who granted he's been to some big stages, but I still look at him as a limitless guy. You know what I mean? Like there were people knew what was happening and who was in these spots, and that's huge, I think, and
Oh
especially
yeah, don't forget AG is still the only two-time Limitless World Champion, right?
that's true. That's That's true, and he's the longest reigning still. He still got that over Channing Thomas by a whopping, I think, 6 days, 5 days. It was close.
Yeah, it was. I see Channing got a little ahead of himself because he had a little poster made saying longest reigning. He gave it to me,
Did you
but I
get
don't
one of
think
those?
it. Yeah, I got one of them. It says he beat Desmond Cole, but I don't. I think he was just jumping the gun.
It seems to be so. It's a collector's item now.
It is. It's that alternate universe kind of thing. Maybe this happened in a Mandela effect.
Yeah,
Um,
a little too overconfident.
Hey, but you know what? I have to say, Shannon Thomas did an excellent job with his title run. Too. Everybody in Limitless that's had that title. I mean, starting with your first champion MJF and just moving forward, everybody's been a knockout all star, and everybody that's taken it has really proved himself by holding it. And then even going beyond that, they've been doing great things after their run.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that it does seem like it's some sort of golden ticket to people who are able to capture the championship and have a run with it. And I think the pressure of past runs really weighs on people too, because there's a lot to live up to now. Channing Thomas over a year, Anthony Green over a year, Alec Price. I think still to this day maybe the most defenses as a reigning champion. So, and then of course you look down the list of names. I mean MJF, Daniel Garcia, Carmelo Hayes, just to name a few. So there's big shoes to fill, and now we got the big Boofa on the mountaintop, standing on top, Limitless Wrestling champion.
And I have to say, the people love Boofer. He was one of the people that, I don't remember when I first saw him. It might have been a couple of years ago when he first came through there that I watched him, but it was something about him that I didn't see anybody else do, and that was get the whole crowd moving. He
It's hard
got
to
them in
do.
such a way, and I was just like, this kid's going places because nobody can get the crowd like that.
You just don't see that all the time. I mean, like the visuals of, if you're looking through like hard cam of the entire crowd moving or bopping with something like that's something that you see at a concert. You know what I mean? You don't always see that in a pro wrestling sense. And the fact that, up here in Maine, a place where he's not from, he came in as a relative outsider in a four-way and captured people. You know what I mean? And that's something that alone is a spot that's hard to break out of. But he just kept getting opportunities and knocking them out of the park. And eventually, when you don't take no for an answer, you make yourself undeniable. And I think that's what Buffa did since his
He did,
debut, but
and I
especially
think
in the past year.
he really solidified it, beating JT Dunn to another original, I feel, in Limitless, and also just in New England. He's been around a long time. He's done a lot of things. And him solidifying that win really, showed, hey, I'm here, and I'm here to take what I want. And, it's just a matter of time. Because, we saw Buford trying to get this for a little while. It wasn't like he just woke up this Vacation Land Cup. He tried the last year, too.
Yeah, I mean he had a couple different occasions. I mean, he was final two of the Vacation Land Cup in 2023. It was Alec Price who took him out of that after he had already been eliminated and essentially handed it to Channing Thomas, who went on to win the belt that very show. But it was a climb for Buffa, man. It was JT Dunn and him allegedly fighting for the right reasons and the same reasons, and then it was JT Dunn that was the reason that Buffa did not capture the championship potentially earlier. So he had a long road. I mean, it was, JT got the unit involved. Dez called back on his friends and above the rest. And, there were situations that had to get handled, but he made his way there. And then I think once he got to those finals, he just was not going to accept, regardless of who was there, it came down to him and Alec face to face at the end of it. But he wasn't going to take no for an answer in that circumstance. And it was a
No,
really talented final.
it was. It could have went either which. It could have went anyway, honestly. Even Gabby could have taken it at some point. She, is a top contender in this area. And she can keep up with any of the guys on any roster.
No doubt. Her and Rourke. I mean, that was just there's some incredible pieces in that final.
Yeah,
And
and look at Rourke now. He's got an ID. Like, people are getting ID'd. People are, going to be moving on. It was a really good, riveting final that night. And like I said, I always wondered how the wrestlers felt because, you play off the crowd, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing playing off the Yarmouth crowd, but when you're playing off an arena crowd, that must be wild. The energy.
It's got to be different because I mean you've got so many different there are, granted, we're just talking about people knowing a lot of the wrestlers on the show, but there's a lot of people who are probably attending their first Limitless Wrestling show at the Coliseum. You know what I mean? So it is where it's, it might be the, 10th, 15th show that some of these people have seen you at. It's going to still be first impression for a lot of people on a big show like that. So you still got to go out, show out, and get people on your side if that's the goal. You know what I mean? And to, the reaction after the 3 count for Bufa, I think said it all. I mean, there were people crying in the front row, and it was a very emotional scene for someone who, for the past couple years has really worked his ass off to get to where he's at.
Yeah, it was well deserved at that, and and even from that, Limitless has grown even more with people like Zilla coming in, and other people have shown up, and it's all leading down to what's coming up this Saturday. I mean, the the first ever Limitless Rumble.
Oh, about time, right, Versace? About time.
It is. It is. I've never seen a Rumble in Limitless, and we are more than happy and proud to sponsor it at the VSW podcast. I love these kinds of things, especially like I said, a Limitless Rumble. I was talking to Lee Miller the other day. He was like, there could be anybody in there. They have such a rich history of people.
That's true. I mean, and we did some deep polls here. We did some deep polls in this Rumble. There's going to be folks that were on the very first Limitless Wrestling event. Some folks who, just like we were talking about, they kind of rose to prominence in our closed taping era, whether it was the road or the feature events that we were doing during that time. Some folks who were on the roster when we just came back to shows in 2021 and 2022. It's really, there are pieces from all around Limitless Wrestling history that are going into this match. So I'm really excited for everyone to see this full lineup, because I'll be real with you, about half the field is going into this unannounced. So there's a lot of surprises and a lot of, deep pulls for people who have been paying attention throughout the years of Limitless Wrestling. I think people will be stoked.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, because we're seeing, we're seeing talent announcement, but is it a 30-man?
30 person. So it is all 30. It is a full Rumble, full deal. It's going to headline the show. So it's going to be a chunk of time, but buckle up, because there's going to be surprises aplenty in this thing. And we're putting the roster today to the test against some of the best that have been in Limitless Wrestling before.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I'm going to go to my phone right now, because I mean, even the people that have been mentioned, it's pretty quite impressive.
There's plenty. There's plenty. Aaron Rourke, Anthony Green, your boy Channing Thomas, of course, Seabass Finn, Milo Mira, who I'm very stoked about his Limitless Wrestling debut.
Yes. That the professional pogo sticker, like, that's so cool. I never even knew that pogo stick was an actual sport till I interviewed him, but he's professional at it, and the dude's reach height.
He's a legit 2-time world champ. It's crazy. It's crazy. And he's insane with it. It's crazy that he's been able to kind of work that into the wrestling ring and into the whole scope. I literally just saw a clip. He's doing a high jump over the top rope, lands a cutter to die jack at Rad Pro. That was insane.
Yeah, that was a great match up on those two. And you just mentioned, like I said, AG and Chen. Right off the bat, you got 2 former Limitless champions right in the Rumble.
I know. And there's so much. Well, Gabby Forza is confirmed for it. Jada Stone is in this thing. Ashley Vox is going to take part. I mean, there's plenty. I'm trying not to trip up and say someone who actually, let's give an announcement. You want to give one right here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. MSP original, a mainstay in Limitless Wrestling, Alexander Lee is making his Yarmouth return. He is going to be a part of the Limitless Rumble this Saturday night in Yarmouth, and I can't wait.
There we go. The Hardcore Jesus. Love it. Love it. Another, just staple name in Maine wrestling. I can't even just say Limitless. Like, Maine itself, everybody knows Alexander Lee.
100%. I mean, he's had quite a history here from, his early days of, NAWA and IWE. He was kind of the flag bearer for a lot of Maine companies in, late 2000s, early 2010s. And then, of course, MSP, the renaissance of MSP and how far that went as a tag team, as a trio. And then, of course, we all remember how that broke down. But Alexander Lee, of course, he's been a mainstay throughout the years of Limitless Wrestling. Last time we saw him, I believe, one-on-one with Beef at the 8th anniversary show. That was over a year ago in Yarmouth. And then he had a knockdown dragout with Aiden Agro earlier this year in Herman. But this is his Yarmouth return, long time coming, and excited to have him in the Rumble this Saturday.
That's going to be wild. Now, let me ask you, what does the Rumble winner get?
So, I mean, we're here crowning number one contender for the Limitless Wrestling World Championship. And I mean, this was really instituted by Desmond Cole, who, someone who has really fought up every step of the ladder. He wants to give an opportunity to anyone on this roster, the hard workers, the grinders, the people who have been here for a long time and put their time in, because these opportunities are hard to come by. I mean, they're not everybody's getting a Limitless Wrestling World Championship match. So on the same night where he's opened up the contract to Calvin Tankman, who's stepping up to the plate to challenge for the championship, we're also crowning a new number one contender for the championship in the Rumble itself.
And I mean, I honestly think that's a fair way to do it, because let's just say you run 12 shows a year just in, Yarmouth. That's only 12 title defenses. That's only 12 people getting a shot. How do you pick those 12? How does Buford pick those 12? This gives somebody, whoever wins this Rumble has gone through 29 other men and women that are like really good. So they obviously deserve that number one contender spot without a doubt.
They've earned it at that point, and I think that's what it's all been about, because, of course, Channing's took a turn about halfway through to like, okay, you run through the roster, feels like he's run through the roster. Now I'm going to try to get some bigger TV guy matches, so to speak, Versace. You know what I'm saying? Like a Swoggle. He wanted to wrestle the big name. He got Danhausen for it. He wasn't too stoked about that. But regardless, he got some bigger names kind of on the bill to collide with, to get that on his resume, and I don't know if the championship kind of became about him in a statement piece, but I think Buford just wants to open this thing up to the workers, you know what I mean? To the guys who have been here and put in the time, just like he has, and just present opportunity at least to, I don't know, people who are, same like we talked about with the Vacation Land Cup, like a Gabby, like a Rourke, like a Jada Stone, who is, one of the hardest workers on the indies, hasn't had a shot really in Limitless Wrestling yet. And you just never know what you could punch yourself in one night for a ticket,
No, you don't. And like I said, a lot of these kids are coming up, people that have been there prior, moving on, like Ricky Smokes. He got his ID. We saw him, Aaron, and Aver all together at one point.
What a group.
Speaking of, Shannon Thomas, look what happened with BRG. He just got signed to MLW. They ran a good tag team within a trios. So a lot of people, again, from even just a couple of years ago, are going skyrocketing through the wrestling industry.
There's so much opportunity up for grabs, not only in Limitless Wrestling, but I think in indie wrestling as a whole as 2025 gets here. Because just like you're saying, I mean, what is the landscape of Limitless or independent wrestling going to look like a year from now? I mean, we're talking about a lot of people who have been scooped up in one way, shape, or form. What does that look like a year down the road? There's a lot of places where people could step up to the plate, knock one out of the park, and especially in this Rumble on Saturday, maybe lock themselves into a spot with Limitless Wrestling moving forward.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, I think you have a lot of good kids that came out of the class of the dojo. You got Jason Maverick. He's collecting gold now around the states. He's starting to make a name. You got Donkey Boy moving on. You got Lee Miller's another one. He's really good out there. There's a lot of people out there that are just. I think in that, in these dojo classes that are coming out, and they might be the new landscape in a year from now. Who knows?
You never know. I mean, there's a lot of hungry cats on the indie scene right now in the Northeast alone. So I just think it's going to be really competitive, and I think that always breeds the best in people, in cards, in shows. When we got some competition going on between people, when people want to be where they want to be, you know what I mean? They're going to fight for it, and it's fun, man. It's fun when a new crop kind of starts to get out there. You can kind of feel it right now. Like you're starting to see a new crop of people from a lot of different wrestling schools around the Northeast just start to make waves. So it's going to be a fun, 2 years to kind of follow the progression and see who really stands out of the pack.
But I feel like that's what I did for the last 2 or 3 years is, follow their progression of those people that came out of those classes, wherever they came from, whether it be New England Pro Academy or, Creative Pro, all these schools that we got in this area. There's a lot. But I was gonna go back to something. From what Limitless is now in Maine, when you first started Limitless, the whole landscape of pro wrestling in Maine was totally different too.
Yes, yeah, it was. I mean, it was there was a lot less shows running than there are today, and I think it was few and far between of what people wanted to support on a monthly basis. So we just wanted to bring kind of a new flavor to everything, and it was a lot of kind of the different promotions would spill out into offshoots of the same promotion, and it was a lot of the same. It was just a lot of the same workers at the time, and we kind of went outside of the box in the sense that we took a lot of wrestlers who were not from the state of Maine, who were not just wrestling in the state of Maine, and brought them to the state, and just kind of intermingled them with some of the top tier guys who were who had made a name in the state or were from the state in general. Like we had Ace Alexander Lee, MSP from the beginning, but a lot of the year one, year two guys who we relied on were maybe from the House of Glory car from New York, like an Alex Mason or Private Party.
Yep.
Good Hank Flanders, I remember on that first show as well. Shout out to Good Hank. But
You used Main Event a lot. Look at them; they got a big match coming up.
they do. I just saw they got announced to wrestle the Hardys, which is
It's
insane.
nuts, and I remember them. Seeing them. They were one of my favorite tag teams. They used to come out to Limitless. Do the whole run through the hoop and everything.
Dude, they're such hard workers. I'm stoked for the two of them. But yeah, dude, the House of Glory Connect has been great through the years because that's a continuous, just like you were saying with Creative Pro and Nepwa. I mean, just consistent producers of top level talent. So to be able to work with them through the years, even have Amazing Red at one point in time teaming with Anthony Gangone was really cool. But yeah, man. I mean, it's been a journey. It's been a journey from the beginning to now.
Yeah, it really has. And like I said, I've talked to a lot of people in Maine. I've had a lot of people on my show. Recently, Larry Huntley was on the show. He was like, "Well, Maine is all fair wrestling except Limitless. Limitless is the only non-fair running show."
That's funny.
Um, I thought that's funny because it does. I've been to a few other shows. You guys do have a different vibe. It might be because of the IWTV thing. It might be because of the talent used and something bringing in the names, but it has a different look, a different feel. Not that any of the other wrestling there's anything wrong with it because it's all really good in my opinion, but just a cleaner look maybe. I don't know.
It's just a different flavor. It's just a different flavor, straight up. And I think that talking Maine, I think everybody's kind of got their distinctive thing, that they look like or that they, try to produce on their events. But we're just trying to have these crazy nights in professional wrestling. Honestly, there's no rhyme or reason. I think some shows look a lot different than others for us, but yeah, I think there's room for everything in between. I think Maine's in a good spot right now too because a lot of people are just trying to help one another as opposed to, it used to be a little different when I first broke in terms of people working other places or just some older school bullshit. But I think that more often than not, people on the main scene now are looking out for each other, hoping that everybody succeeds and does right, and
We
just
got a
trying to
lot
make
more.
the wheel.
We've got a lot more collabs now between inter promotion collabs. Sometimes titles get defended. I saw your Let's Wrestle title get defended on a Proving Ground show. That was cool.
No doubt.
Um, people working together because at the end of the day, the fans are fans of the wrestlers, not so much the promotion. So they want to see the guys and girls, but they don't want to get into tribalism. So if everybody's getting along and working together, then everybody can see more wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. And the more good wrestling out there, the better, in my opinion.
It is. I mean, that's why I really like right now. I think there's more promotions in Maine than ever before. You got MPW, EWA has came back. You got the Up and Crown. You got NAWA still running. You got Limitless. You got all these places in different locations running different shows that give not only the locals more ring time, more exposure, more stuff to do, but it also brings in people from Mass that can come up and work and vice versa. I mean, the main guys come down here.
No doubt. Yeah, it's opened up a lot of doors, both ways for, some dojo guys, some main guys in general to be able to get some out of state work and then vice versa. I've seen a lot of, MPWs brought in a lot of out of state people, even some out of the country folks from Canada as well. And Larry's always got his different carloads coming in from different spots. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. It's been a lot of fun.
It is, but I also find that and just talking to guys and girls that Limitless itself is almost a prize, a destination, a place to be. Because I remember, when I first, like I said, came in 2018 around, I saw a very young BRG. I saw a very young Channing Thomas. I actually saw MSP there. Alexander Lee was at that NCW show. Ava Everett was at that show. Mike Montero, Dirt City Murder Crew. But at that point, these guys, Limitless was on their list. They wanted to get there. And I remember when I interviewed BRG, he was very excited when him and Channing, they kind of came in the same time, got into Limitless. It
Dude,
was a big deal.
BRG, he's so good. He's so good. I've been a huge fan of his since before I was working with him. Honestly, I saw him do a lot at IWE back in the day, and dude, it was great. It was great. He was on fire from a young age, and just kind of figured himself out and continued to work at it. And now he's become, I think, one of the best in this area, bar none.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, he knows how to, even then, he knew how to grab heat when, it's hard already coming in, I think, as a smaller wrestler, not being, big stature. But to be
Yeah.
able to draw the heat the way he did, he used the fans, just against themselves. He did things to make them mad. And him being smaller and winning in such ways, it made them even more mad when I used to see him. And same thing with Channing. Channing was going back and forth, good, bad, and then he finally, just kind of figured himself and found himself. And I think of both of them, honestly found a lot of it. I think John Alba had a lot to do with it. I think Alba helped both of them tremendously.
Alba, yeah, he was really passionate about the prestigious idea, the group moving forward and where they were going to take it. And he really, he had a lot of.
No, he did, and he was another, I feel like, a very underrated person in Limitless. He wasn't there very, very, very long, but he had a really nice impact. The things he was doing, the managing, his, how he was trying to get people recruited. We still here, Mr. Carver. Seem to have a little bit of technical issue, folks. But yeah, I'll talk a little bit, why we're getting ready here. It's gonna be a show. If you haven't got out Saturday, if you haven't, well, it's sold out now. If you can't watch it and you didn't get your tickets, IWTV is going to be your go-to. Here we go. We're coming back.
Hey, sorry, I
Welcome
got
back.
booted out of there.
No
You
worries.
got
I was
me?
just telling the fans that the show is sold out, but they can catch it on IWTV,
Hell
obviously.
yeah.
Um, because it's gonna be a good event. But yeah, I was saying Albert, probably that Albert was a very underrated person in Limitless history. I think he had a really good role, trying to make people prestigious. All that storyline, what he did with Beck, what he did with Davey, all that stuff.
Oh,
It really,
dude,
it
John,
really was good storytelling.
he was instrumental in that time frame because we're still kind of figuring out in the closed taping like what the roster was going to look like when we came back. And I think, in that year and a half following the closed tapings, prestigious was so important. They had a lot surrounding them. I mean, I remember a very memorable moment on that first show back. It was the day after Anthony Green was let go from NXT, and they came out to his theme music and caused a lot of
Yes.
strife.
Oh my
Um,
God, I was sitting there. Okay, and not to mention, Ace Romero came out in the beginning of that show, and he was talking, and at the end he said, "And everything is all good," and he gave like a little wink. Now, if anybody knows, AG's original name was like All Good Anthony Green. So we're
yes.
like, okay, people are thinking. Then all of a sudden, a little bit later, that music hits. Everybody goes nuts, and then you just see BRG with this shit-eating grin, and everybody's just pissed.
Yeah, that was a rough one. That was a rough one for people.
They got the most heat I probably ever seen them get, but it was great. It really was. That was played so well. And they came out, Mac Daniels is another one. Just he has the face that you just want to hate him.
Yeah, 100%.
Super talented, but it's just they're all really good at drawing that heat. Yeah, that
They
that
were
that
quite a
trio is
package
probably one
together.
of my favorite limitless trios that would emerge. And again, all those guys went again to bigger and better places. Even Albert doing wonderful things on the air too.
Yeah, he's on every week with Matt Hardy too on the podcast. So he's got a lot going on right now.
And it's great. It's great. It's just wild to think though. It's like what you're in year 9.
Yeah, we're in the middle of year 9, and it'll be 10-year anniversary next September. Pretty
You know,
crazy.
and if you think about that, right? Think about like even WWE WrestleMania 10. Yeah, but now think of like 10 years of what's gone through. It's like, wow, there's a lot that's happened in just 10 little years.
It's a lot. It's time. Time moves fast, and it's kind of crazy to even look back. I was cutting some clips before we got on here of just stuff from earlier this year, and it's just crazy to think back on where we were even in January, February, and now where we are now. But yeah, it'll definitely, as the anniversary approaches next year, I think a lot will come flooding in of just like how, there's been so much that's happened through the history at this point in time. And it'll just, yeah, it's kind of crazy that we've had the opportunity to do this as long as we have.
But I love that you also have historians like Mike Lab that, produce these great books that have all of this documented.
Man, he's a wealth of knowledge. I'll if I have questions about anything, that's who I hit up to just be like, hey, what was this guy's history in Maine, or what do you remember about this? Because my memory is kind of foggy in some places. I assume you would agree, but I I don't always have the backlog of stuff that like Labby has of just he can anything 70s, 80s, 90s. I can remember a lot of what I've seen, but before that, it does get a little foggy for me. So. Yeah, he just has done a great job on those books. I mean, if you haven't checked one out, there are some. He's got 2 releases now: an almanac and then a complete kind of history of Limitless Wrestling book. That's got. I mean, it's got results. It's got literally tracked by the numbers of wins and losses. It's got fun facts and just about anything that you could wonder about anyone who's been involved in Limitless Wrestling. It's there. So you can
Yeah,
get him.
I
He's
have
got
to
him
say,
pretty
I
much
mean, I
every
grabbed
show.
both of them, and I was just astonished to read through it because, I mean, I went back, obviously, the pandemic, when everything got closed down, I went and bought those tickets for that AG show. But then the
Yeah.
pandemic happened. I went back to the website, and I ended up, you guys have a great collection of DVDs, so I bought a bunch of DVDs.
I know
And
you did. You were stocked right up.
I've been watching, I watched a lot of those in the 2020 and just, seeing the talent that were even on those shows and where they were at the point and all the names that have moved through New England, but just also how the show has evolved um, visually. Like I said, right now, Limitless has a really clean cut look. Um, the way the editing done, the videoing is done, everything. It's really top notch. But that took time. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, it took a while. It was a lot of trial and error. I mean, we didn't even attempt live streaming until November of 2019, right before the shutdown, because we didn't have all of our ducks in a row. And I think for a few years it was just really figuring out, okay, can we get this thing taped and have commentary on it and edited in one swoop and be okay with that? Because even that alone is it's a lot. It's a lot to do. But we've got a great team together. Harry Aaron kind of taking the head on the actual live cut and production of the shows now. He's kind of moved from being a photographer for us to doing some backstage work to now. I really think we found our groove. And of course, we got Paulie, Pigpen on the outside, who is one of the best in the biz, in my opinion, of shooting things outside the ring. And we just got a great camera crew around as well. Our photographers, our anyone who's doing video either upstairs or downstairs. It's a very tight crew right now. I think everybody knows what's trying to be achieved, and We've had some really tight broadcasts in the past, and
Yeah,
we've
I've
got,
gotten pretty
Motion
friendly
Hard
with
Cam now.
what's his name? Chris Klatz, is it?
Chris Cates, yeah, Voodoo Media.
Yeah, he does some really good photography. I've seen him in a few of the Yaman shows, and I saw him at Vacation Land Cup. He was grabbing all sorts of shots, doing cool things. I love
He
seeing the
goes the
photography
extra
because
mile too. He's always grabbing like pre-show or post-show stuff, and we got Sonny as well, Steve Abadili, and Nate who pops in sometimes. I mean, it's a good rotation we've got going on.
it is. A lot of people, they forget about the photography of this kind of media end of it, but it's still an important role in wrestling. I know it's not as important as the short clips now, because short clips seem to be what drives, but there's a lot of people out there that still just respect the photography of pro wrestling.
No doubt, dude. I mean, some of the coolest shots we have through the years we would never have if not for good photographers.
Now, let me ask you, what made you even want to do all this?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, it was at a point. There were a few of us who were just a little frustrated with what was going on, and I think more so than frustration, it was just wanting to bring kind of a new groove to the main wrestling scene, because we were seeing, I was lucky enough. I grew up a little bit on some Ring of Honor. I had it on HD Net, and then of course we had a local Bull Moose Music record store that would have a lot of old school kind of. Someone must have dumped off their indie wrestling collection a time or two, but I'd be able to pick up some old Ring of Honor DVDs and like Johnny Torres and Scotty Wilde. Scotty Wilde, a Massachusetts native. They hooked myself and Ace Romero very early on what independent wrestling actually was, and showed us some PWG and some different shit like that, and it was like, oh wow, like this is a little different than what we're experiencing here at this Cityside Restaurant and Brewer. It was just it was the whole different feel of what indie wrestling was, and we had taste of that. You know what I mean? Because there were, it's not to say that the main scene was in the shitter by any means. I mean, it was just there was such a direction that the wrestling in Maine was taking at that time, and it really was not the direction that any of us wanted to go. And I say us as in, the guys that we had very early on, Ace and MSP, and Eric Greenleaf and Ethan Scott were a part of those preliminary conversations. But just wanting to do something different, and had some of that experience being able to travel out of state. I was going to some Beyond shows at that time, some CZW, some XWA even back in the day,
Yep.
and just getting at least a feel for what different places were presenting in wrestling. And I don't know, that's what really kicked it into high gear. I mean, I remember very vividly, I had this in some locker room in Skowhegan. I had this conversation with Rugged Rick Daniels, who's a longtime Maine OG, and it's just like, if you're not happy, why the fuck are you doing it? Like, why don't you do something else? And I was like, if not that blunt, but like, I'm like, you're right. We should just at least focus our efforts into doing one show, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. And here we are
There's
today.
no harm in trying, and like you said, you were checking out Beyond. Beyond does, was doing wonderful things. I feel here at Mass. They were another one that I quickly, after seeing a bunch of the logos, I gravitated to Beyond, because they were the ones bringing in the name. They had like OC, Orange Cassidy, Chris Statlander at that show. They had MSP was at that show that I went to them. They actually were. It was a Please Come Back show. But I noticed that Beyond was the brand around here that was bringing in a lot of these names that would soon like form AEW. And so,
Yeah.
and then when I saw Limitless, I was like, oh, they're doing the same thing up north. That's awesome.
And a lot of people did move on to AEW too. I mean, a lot of people who were within the mix of, I don't know, 2017 to 2019 Limitless. You see a lot of them today on AEW.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean that one match that happened was Chris Stat versus Anthony Green, and Chris Stat went to AEW. We get Dan Housen coming back and forth, but he's in AEW. There's a lot of people. But that scene in New England, we had a lot of people like Dijak and other people too that went into WWE and would come back later or are still there.
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
England's a very rich wrestling. I feel we have a lot of great talent that flows through here. Whether they're here
Yeah,
for a
it's been a
couple of months or
hotbed.
they're here for years, it's like they come through.
Yeah, yeah. You catch them at some point in time if you're around. I think 100% between a few of the companies. You know.
And then, I mean, you guys do something. Well, you guys in Maine can do something a little bit cooler too. Is you can bring in the Canadian people
Yeah,
easier.
yeah. I mean, we're lucky to have guys who are from the Maritime area, even Quebec. I mean, that is a bit of a stretch of a drive, but we've been able to work with different carloads and talent pools that are up there, and have some good connects up there with like the Kaizen crew with Covey Christ and the Quebec crew of Zach Patterson, who's coming in this weekend for the Rumble. Actually, Tabernacle the team, who we've been having back a few times. I love TDT. Yeah,
And I mean,
I
I've
mean, there's
even
some
seen,
great
you
talent up
guys
north.
brought in the Fisto. She was great. Jody Threat,
I love Jody Threat. Yeah, hell yeah. Half of the
and these are
TNA
people that,
women's
like I
tag
said,
champs
Mass.
now.
Sometimes it's too far to get them to come to Mass, but in Maine, if it's over the border and not too far, it's a little bit quicker. They'll drive. They'll drive from Canada to Maine.
No doubt, no doubt. It's a lot closer for a lot of people than some of the
Well,
bookings they
that's what
might
I was
get.
saying when we went to that Brewers show. First of all, the degrees changed about 30 degrees, and then all of a sudden, my friend sees signs for Tim Hortons. He's like, "I think we went into Canada." I'm like, "I haven't hit the border check yet."
No, not yet. Yeah, we've had a few shows. I mean, throughout the years that have been literally a stone's throw from Canada. We did, I think, 2 shows in Calais last year. Maybe one was earlier this year, but you're literally driving to the venue, and you could literally throw a stone across the river into Canada. So it was very close, and I did not have cell. That's a funny story actually, because we stayed at the Callis Motor Inn, which is famous for its appearance on Trailer Park Boys, but uh, we didn't realize that our phones had connected to a different time zone because of how close we were to Canada. So we, had a bit of a rendezvous the night before. I think a lot of people went to bed pretty late, and I think Johnny Torres, myself, and pretty much everybody else who was in our car, except for Perry Von Vicious, were out there an hour early because we thought that we had to get the fuck out of there. And Perry, smart enough, he got his shower in. He had an extra hour of sleep because we didn't have to be out of there till 11 o'clock. But we're down waiting in the car at 9:55. Like, where's Perry? And we had the egg on our face.
That's great. Oh, give it old Perry. He's another one. I saw him come such a long way. Like I swear, everybody right now that's in this game and is making a name, I saw at that first NCW show. It's crazy to think about, but I did. I saw I saw Perry Von Vicious wearing a money suit. He was
Yes,
heel, with a $1 million Ted DiBiase kind of thing going on, but I loved it. And then,
the
soon I would
money
see him
suit is
tagging up
iconic.
with Tomahawk, which later would become Rip Bison. And look at those two. Japan contracts, they're bringing people back and forth. Grind Pro, so much. And there are another two on the industry that's just exploded.
Yeah, so much happening for them right now, and it's so cool to see because I mean there have been points of reinvention for both men along the way, and I think that alone it takes a lot of courage to just say, all right, I'm gonna scrap everything that I've been doing and just restart, and you gotta hope that you're right about that endeavor, and I think that right now we're probably getting the most organic Perry and Rip that we ever have, and I think it really hits on a lot of levels for people. I mean, we really just
Yeah,
had
I
the
obviously am a big fan of what both of them do, and especially Rip, because he's bringing a lot of that strong style to the Americas. He's bringing it here.
no doubt.
And you don't always see a lot of that style. You just don't, because a lot of people don't work Japan, so they don't know. But bringing that back and forth, bringing guys back and forth, that's another huge thing. You guys just had a tag team called the Limitless that came from Japan. That was a very nice thing to see happen.
So cool because that wasn't in the cards for us necessarily. That's kind of the pro wrestling grind gateway kind of opening up there as Jet Wee, the Japanese heavy tank Kodai Nozaki making their debuts not only for Limitless but for grind in that swoop. I mean, something that I hope we get to do again, but what an honor to be able to host them while they're in town.
It is. Growing up, we would be really proud to see our wrestlers. Like, I mean, then it was like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, at least for me. But going to Japan, because you would see them fight in a different light. Hogan could actually wrestle in Japan.
No doubt.
And put on an actual good match. It wasn't just a couple of moves. Because they wanted more out of him and they knew he could do more. But it was always such a prestige because the international gap was really large then. It wasn't like today where you got people going to WXW in Germany and you got people going here. Finland now got some slam wrestling, started up. They're getting people in and over. The international scene and the European scene is much bigger now.
Yeah.
But years and years ago, Japan was the head spot to be. And if you can make yourself to Japan, well, you were an all-star in the U.S. already.
Yeah, it was a big deal. It still is a big deal.
It is, and that's why I love seeing people like AG over there and Ribbon and Perry over there. I'm just I think more and more people are going to try to go there because they're seeing the benefit and the opportunities are there to shine. Where
No
they
doubt.
that
And
the doors have been open years ago.
yeah, and it's I don't know, it's just beautiful that there are multiple kind of avenues that you can make this happen for yourself now, you know?
It is. It really is a boom era of wrestling. And it's great to see that because you never know which way it could go. It's so much different than when I was a kid. When I went to indie wrestling as a kid, like I said to a lot of people, we'd get the tickets for free if we donated to the fire department, first off. And then we'd go there. We wouldn't know any of the roster, but we would know like the one ups. Honky Tonk Man would be there. Some WCW rep would be there. Warlord.
My
Different
boy
people.
Honky.
We would go to see them, but we didn't know any of the local roster. You go
Yeah,
into an
yeah.
indie show today, the local roster, everybody got a name, a character. They're complete.
Yeah, it's much different. I mean, it's people who are, depending on the level, but I mean, it's often people who are trying to get to that next step up, you know what I mean? So they're working their ass off around the clock, whether it's in the gym or you're rounding out a character, rounding out what they want to be as a professional. It's cool to see. And you're literally seeing people on the come up who, their goal could be going to Japan, like we were just talking about. It might be getting a WWE or a TNA or an AEW contract. It might be just traveling the world as an independent wrestler. It's people with all these different aspirations and goals, and you're kind of seeing them in the melting pot of independent wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, there's many people that have gotten great success. Like, look at Matt Cross. I mean, he's one of the greatest independent wrestlers out there that traveled the world.
He's a pioneer. He's the true definition of an indie wrestling pioneer. And that dude, I mean, I literally just saw him the other night post about doing 7 days straight on the road, 20 hours in a car throughout that week. And then, he's right back at it this weekend. He's going to be in Buffalo. So he's someone who I always keep tabs on because I'm always so curious of his journey and just what he's up to, because he's the spirit of independent wrestling living and breathing today.
And he can still do it no matter, like, I know he's a little older in age, but my God, like, even when he did a Vacation Land Cup, he was still very fast paced, very back and forth.
Bro, and that's him also working with someone who hadn't been in the ring in fucking 5 years, I think, in a Luke Robinson. And like, it's just any scenario, it's just snap of a finger. It's nothing for Matt Cross. And also, shouts to Luke as well for being so ready for something like that after being out of the ring so long. But it's also a testament to M Dog, who just, like I said, any scenario you put him in, he's going to knock it out of the park every single time.
No, definitely, definitely. And one of actually the first matches I've ever watched on TV was actually him versus Chris Bay. I think it was SWF. They were fighting in a bar, and I was
Wow, no
just,
shit.
yeah, I got it on. It was like I signed up at the time Fight TV, and I was like, they gave you a free pay per view, and I saw this one. I was like, this looks interesting. I grabbed it, and it was them two fighting in a bar in Vegas, and I think Marco Stunt was on the card. There's a few people on the card, but it was no ring. And I was just astonished
Yeah.
at what they could do in the storytelling without the ring.
I know it's those are very interesting matches to watch for that alone. Is like, what do you, without your typical canvas there to paint on? What do you drum up? What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean that's why I like No Peace Underground was doing it for a while too, and they were another one that kind of just pioneered that like no ring look, and it's just like it just goes to show you that the art of wrestling doesn't really necessarily need the ring. Well, that's what people think of pro wrestling. You can still tell the story in other ways. It's cool to see. You know, it's cool to see things that are different and not always the same exact way done.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm really excited for this Rumble coming up. And not only that, I mean, then in January, you guys are back in Herman, and you got Matt Cardona.
I know, dude. Long time coming. That's literally been something that we've been trying to lock down and square up for about 3 years now. And of course, I think he's one of the busiest independent wrestlers on the scene since we've been a promotion. Like legitimately, he comes to mind. I would say Speedball comes to mind. Cody Rhodes, obviously, in his heyday on the independents. I would say Ricochet as well was really sought after. 2017 kind of area, but it's just been a process to get this one locked down. So we had to jump at the opportunity when it was there, and it's going to kick off our 2025 schedule. That's Sunday, January 12th, back in Central Maine at the beautiful Morgan Hill Event Center in Herman, and I would say one of the most beautiful venues that we've ever had a chance to host an event in. It's typically a wedding venue, and rightfully so, but we're going to bring some madness into the room in January.
I'm excited for it. I haven't not yet been to a Herman show, but I've seen photos. Just the arena alone is amazing. Though it looks so beautiful there.
It's incredible, and there's just the different vantage points of how you can watch the show as well. Because, of course, up close and personal on the floor is great, but there's also the option to be on the balcony and look down upon it, which we do not have that chance very often in pro wrestling venues. But there's a beautiful balcony that spans around the room where you can kind of watch the event from anywhere. So it's a cool lookout point.
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've been to a few shows where you can get up on like a stage kind of set, and seeing that from like the overhead is a totally different experience than seeing, like you said, looking straight on and being ringside. Because now you're seeing like a bigger, larger picture, and
Yeah,
it's
you
cool
can
to
kind
see
of
in
see the whole
person.
floor.
Usually you can only see those through camera cuts. Somebody will cut the camera to a bigger view. It's like, but now you can watch the whole thing that way.
Right.
It's going to be a wild ride, and seeing who's going to win. I mean, like I said, I can't even pick a winner because I don't know anybody that's in it, but anybody could win it. Anybody can win a Rumble.
It's really a toss
But
up, I feel like.
let me ask you: were people picking? How did you decide who comes in when? Did they draw randomly?
We are going to have a drawing, but the lineup is not confirmed in terms of order as of now. As we sit here today, there's no confirmation of the order. There's been no determination of spots because this did kind of come together pretty quickly. This was an organic kind of idea from the Big Boofa on how to kind of open up the stakes and really give everybody a shot here. So we've been kind of pawing through the roster of who's going to be in this thing, and of course the surprise entrance as well. That's an element that's going to be an interesting mix into the whole field. So
Oh, look at
I'm
that. We got
I'm
a
excited
comment
to see
from
it.
the master of belly rubs and stuff, Brian Bayside. He says that he would like an opportunity in the Rumble, maybe if not the first one, maybe the second.
Maybe the second one. We do have the entrance confirmed in terms of 30 people in this thing, but they're not laid out in any kind of order as of now. So I think a lot of people are going to find out where these folks are coming out when they break curtain, and then there's also on top of it, there's another
I
mystery to the
honestly
night.
like it that way. I'm the kind of person when I used to, I watched a lot of videotapes as a kid. I'm a little bit older, and I'd go rent the Rumbles at the video store. And I'm the kind of person because they would name all 30 people in the beginning. I would skip through that part, fast forward, so I wouldn't know who was in the Rumble.
Oh yeah, so you got surprised as they came out.
Because I love being surprised, in a Rumble. I love to see who are they going to bring? Who could this be? Like, and I always thought that was great to not know all 30 people. Yeah, you might know 10 or 15, or, your superstars are going to be in there, but there's so many other people that could. And that's what always the
Yeah.
draw is. What's going to, bring it? Who's going to show up? What are they going to bring? Who could we see from the past? Well, who might we see that's coming in that might be the future, too? There's a
Right.
lot of people that made a name for themselves in Rumbles and stuff, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of
You know,
opportunity to
they
do
can
that on
come in, they
Saturday.
start throwing out 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. You know, there's going to be all new records for you people. Like the longest lasting Rumble, person that's been in there the longest, person that's eliminated the most people. These are
That's
all
going to
new
have to be
things,
a new section of Michael Labby's next book. It's kind of
right?
running
It's
down the
going to have
Rumble
all this
here.
new information.
It's a lot of statistics.
Well, I mean, I'm here for it. And again, you know, we were more than happy to sponsor this Rumble because I want to see Buford get the greatest opponent he can receive. And that's going to be the person that beats 29 other men and women in a Rumble.
It's going to be interesting, man, because it's legitimately it is open to anyone. And when we had that thing wide open, we got a lot of inquiries from some surprising parts of town, but it's just going to make for a fun field, a fun fray for people to enter into, and I think a suspenseful Rumble that I'm just stoked that we're finally having. I mean, we've done a few in Let's Wrestle before, our sister promotion, but it has never come to Limitless, and it feels like, especially with the depth of the roster, the position that we're in right now, it's the perfect time to do it.
It is. And I think it's going to, you know, like I said, there's a lot of good talent out there right now. A lot of good talent. So it's really hard to decide who could win. I mean, even like I said, the final four of that Vacation Land Cup could have went any which way at any point because all four were there. All four are capable of holding a title. All four are capable of winning. Same thing's going to happen in a Rumble when you got, you know, 30 people that are all capable.
100%. It's going to make it more interesting as it goes on.
It is. It is. I can't wait. I'm very excited for it. I wish it was Friday so then I could just head out to Maine the next day. But we still got a few more days ahead. Let me add something because we're just about out of time. Time does fly when we're having fun. And believe me, this has been a lot of fun. I've been, you know, you talked about wanting to Rumble for a while. I've been wanting you on the show for a while.
It's
Um,
been a minute, man. I'm happy to finally be here.
No, like I said, we're huge supporters of Limitless. We love it. It's one of my premier brands of pro wrestling that I hold it at a very high standard. And I think it should be a standard across the board of what high end independent wrestling looks like. But you know, for the people at home that maybe have never heard of Limitless, because I don't know who's listening or not, what's the easiest way for them to find or watch or get to know the brand?
Good question, man. So we're putting free content just about every day, but a lot every week on youtube.com/limitless wrestling. You can find some full shows. Actually, the Vacation Land Cup that we just talked about at the Coliseum in Lewiston, that's available 100% free on the YouTube channel. And there's going to be a lot more ways that you can view full shows and our content through the YouTube in the new year. So if you want to plug in now, subscribe. We're all over social media. Limitless Wrestling on Facebook, at LW Maine on X. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Instagram. Pretty much anywhere that's got a social account, you can find us. We also have a podcast. The Limitless Wrestling Podcast drops, I would say, once or twice going into show months as we do previews. We do Ask Limitless. We do a ton of stuff on there as well. So shoot that a subscription if you're into podcasts. And then for any information regarding shows, future tickets, any info, just limitlesswrestling.com for pretty much all needs like that. And you can follow us everywhere.
You forgot to mention though your YouTube's gold plaque.
It is. It is. Yeah, we are. We did hit the 1 million mark on YouTube. I believe. I don't know where we're at today, but within the top 10 of the most viewed wrestling YouTube channels in the world. So
I think
we
you're right
appreciate
under
all the
Mr.
support.
You're right under Mr. Beast. You're catching up to him, honestly.
I don't know if we're that close yet. I think he's got quite a few, but making
But
waves.
no, I
Making
love to
waves.
see. You know, I'm going for the silver one myself. I think this will be the year. I'm pushing for that silver plaque.
You're
We're
not too
getting
far off,
closer.
are you?
About 12 away. 12 away. Maybe 18
That's
away. I don't know.
incredible.
I don't really count. I just do. It was never nothing that I thought would even happen. I didn't even think anybody would come and listen to me talk about indie wrestling, but I wanted to do it because I saw these great shows that were taking place, and I feel like enough people weren't talking about it.
That's
I never
fair.
thought it would take off. I never thought it would go anywhere. A lot of it was, right timing, pandemic. People were home. People had time to listen.
And look at it now.
but it helped me just grow, and it helped me. And like similar to other people and other even promotions, I always just try to do more and more. This season 3, we've done more. We're always updating, audio stuff, video equipment, everything we can do to try to make it a better, cleaner product. And it's just something that I've been growing and growing and continuing to do, and it's something that I enjoy. It's fun for me. I said I get to talk to cool people like you and talk about cool wrestling, and just it's a lot of fun. The people that I get to meet and the stories that I get told, it's unbelievable. Really is mesmerizing
Yeah,
to think about it.
you've built yourself a little network here, and a community that's involved with what you're doing. So it's a nice add to have on to just Northeast wrestling in general, to be able to have something that's perpetuating what's going on, enlightening people to the wrestlers and the people in the area in wrestling. So it's a service, dude.
It is, and I try to do it a little different. I don't like to play off any negativity. I don't like to play off the rumors of the dirt. I just like to, promote the good wrestling.
Yeah, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
The casual fan don't know the difference. They're gonna tune in. And if I'm talking bullshit, they're gonna be like, "Well, the whole industry's that way." They don't need that. They need to see this is what it is, and this is how
Yeah,
good it is. Check it out.
no doubt. That's the way to be, man.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and we will see you Saturday, definitely.
Sounds like a plan.
Um,
Hell
I
yeah.
will tell people online now. Me and one of the one of your greatest fans, Alex, are going to be doing another live podcast in the parking lot of Yarmouth. We'll be interviewing anybody that wants to talk. If wrestlers want to come on and talk, fans want to come on and talk, tell me your picks, who you think's going to win, all that. Me and Alex are going to be talking about it all that day.
Love it. That's gonna be fun as hell.
I love hooking up with Alex because he's such a limitless guy, and it's like I'm a limitless guy, and sometimes he's like a strict limitless guy though, like strictly limitless, so I can talk just limitless with him. It's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's some good connections you can make, especially in
And
the
again,
line
it's
at
just
shows.
great to meet these people that I've all met through wrestling and through podcasting and wrestling and all together and all have it combined and all for a good cause. But
It's the
thank you
best.
very much for coming on. Thank you everybody at home for listening. And as always, support indie wrestling. Saturday night. If you didn't get your ticket, IWTV is going to be your best friend. Versace Stoner out.